fine paintings on all. It's been fun.
Good, good. Well, I think it's 101, so we'll get
Okay,
started.
we're on it.
We've got 20 people in
Cool.
the area, and so welcome everybody. I'm Bonnie Griffith. I'm the hosting the We Talk Art, and I'm super excited to be able to visit with Mark Ivan Cole today, and all of the things that he's got going. And you can just see from the background in his studio, he's got some good stuff going. Anyway, so if you're not muted, if you'll please mute, just so that we don't get a lot of background noise, and then use the chat box if you have questions, and we'll try to answer those as we can. I see I got a heart from April. Thanks, April. And I'm just gonna let Mark take it away because he's got some good stuff planned for us. So, Mark, tell us how you got started in the art biz and what as a kid, how did what prompted you?
Yeah, okay. I will definitely do that. I'm going to spotlight myself for everybody, which means that when no matter who's talking, I'll still be the largest head on your screen, as it were. Hopefully that'll work. So yeah, let me talk about when I first got started. My mom used to tell a story about me versus my older sister doing the drawing of the same thing. And it was an old allegory of the house on the rock and the house on the sand. Some of you may know the story. And the house on the rock stands firm, and the house on the sand just gets knocked away by the storms. So the idea is to have a good, firm foundation. And she said that my sister, who was 2 years older than I, her house on the rock was, that had a nice picket fence, and it was standing tall, and a little smoke coming out of the chimney, and it looked good. It was very nice. And her house in the sand was, oh, it fell over. And so it's kind of skewed a little bit. And she said, I was what, 4 years old? So she was 6, and I was 4. And she said, my house on the rock was like boom, 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 done. And the house on the sand was just, everything was going everywhere. You could just see the storm had blown the thing to smithereens, and you could see smithereens flying. So apparently, I was a highly expressionist artist at the age of 4, and but I just love to draw. I absolutely love to draw. You give me a pencil and papers, and I was good for hours, even as a kid. And bless my folks, they did that over and over again. I remember being 10 years old and getting on an airplane for a long trip, and I got a brand new sketchbook and brand new pencil, and it was just like, oh. And so I was fine. I completely happy for the entire thing, just having the drawing to do. And I was the kid that they had to call to the dinner table multiple times because I was so focused on the drawing I didn't want to quit. And that was me up through grade school into middle school. Somewhere in that period, I really wanted to get it right. I really wanted, I wanted accurate drawings, and I was so frustrated with mine because they seemed either cartoony or skewed or just not, I didn't get the thing right. And so I would ask a friend who was a better artist, how do you draw an eye? And he would give me the patterns to draw the eye and with the folds and over the thing. And again, they were all, it felt cartoony to me even when I was done with it. It's like, okay, I can do that, but it looks the same every time. It's not like somebody's eye. And I frustrated with that. And my parents loved coffee table books. And one of the coffee table books they had, which was a huge influence on me, was one by Arthur Guptill called Norman Rockwell Illustrator. Have you seen that book? Oh my gosh, it's this big. I mean, that the coolest thing is it's like large format. So it's a coffee table book, beautiful printing inside, page after page after page, not only discussing how he did things, but actually showing you the drawings, the preparatory drawings, some of the photo setups. He didn't do photos as much. I'll get into that a minute later. But he would have a sitter, and he would draw in charcoal, and then that charcoal drawing would end up on the canvas. He would draw it on canvas in charcoal first, and then paint over that, and it's mind-boggling what he was getting, and they were so accurate. They were so good, and I'm like, okay, so that's what good drawing is. And another guy that I was very into was a cartoonist, Von Shoemaker. My parents had a cartoon. He was an editorial cartoonist, political cartoonist, and I was amazed at how he could get things look like they were moving and they looked like they were strong, and his backgrounds were fantastic, and he would do this with like a lithographic crayon or China marker sort of wax pencil, and I'm trying to copy it with with a number 2 lead pencil, and it would be just trying to get those shadings right on some of those marks. So I would work stroke after stroke after stroke trying to get that right, and I did some decent copies as a kid. But by the time I was into high school, I was still trying to be perfect. And I really wanted to get it done. I wanted it to be right. I want to show you something here. I'll share a screen here. I'll pull this up. This is me at 15 doing the best landscape drawing I have ever done in my life. Let me share that screen. All right, here we go. Yeah. So this is my best landscape drawing ever. And it's about, I think it's about 11 by 17. It might be a little bit bigger. You can see the 2 holes over here. That was one of those little clip things that they would put on it, so you could keep the paper on the pad for a while. And so I did this with a number 2 pencil and tried to get it right. And this is from another one of those coffee table books. I think it was on National Parks. And you can see my lousy handwriting down here below says Black Hills, South Dakota. And I signed everything MIC at that time. But the thing that really got me was this beautiful snag going down the hill like this. And I tried to get every little bit of that snag. I thought that was super cool. But you notice I got things like I've got a tangent here. My trees are too strong up in here, so they kind of come forward. They look like they're marching over the hill rather than behind it. I did okay with the values, trying to get from here to here to here to here. Of course, I had to outline everything, and then I outlined every cloud, and they all look like UFOs to me, flying across the landscape. But I got the scale okay. There's a bigger one here, and a little bit smaller, a little bit smaller, a little bit smaller. But I remember finishing this and thinking, this is the best I've ever done, and it's not that good. I remember being so frustrated thinking, when am I going to get this? How am I going to start, really drawing this stuff? And so I tried. I just kept trying. And this is at age 15 here, 14 or 15. And I kept going. And then eventually, years later now, so let me show you the next one. So I started getting a little bit more work, I just worked and worked and worked. And here, this is colored pencil. And this is 16 by 20. And it took probably 100 hours to do every little leaf of ivy and every blade of grass and every crack in the wall. And this is actually an amalgamation of, and a slight modification of 3 different photographs that I put together for this scene that I just had in my head. There's an old farmer sitting on the back of his truck. There's a fashion model, and then aqueduct from, I think, Italy, from the National Geographic. And then I sort of made up some of this stuff down here where this goes underneath, and we have no idea what happens there. But so this was the epitome then of me getting really, really accurate. And it's 1994 at this point. So I was doing everything as accurately as possible, trying to get as dark as I could. In fact, it's hard to shoot this because the part like here where the blacks are really actually a little less intense than that, but very hard to photograph these. So this is 16 by 20, probably 100 hours, every single rock of every single thing. Here's a smaller, this is a 9 by 12. And again, you notice I'm doing every little bit, trying to get very, very accurate. You'll notice these are both fantasy art. At that time, Wizards of the Coast had that Magic the Gathering card thing had just come out, and the artists that were doing stuff for that were getting just it was really wild. They started with no money at all, right? So what they did, instead of paying the artists for the work specifically, they said, well, we're going to take this small percentage of the profits and split it among you like 20 people. Would that be okay? And they're like, yeah, sure. Yeah, we'll paint stuff and you can do that. That little percentage split between 20 people ended up being thousands upon thousands of dollars. And it and it burgeoned from there. And so it was like a really cool thing to have happen. And so I was doing these sort of to show to Wizards of the Coast and say, hey, I can do this. Um, I could be one of your stable of artists, part of your stable of artists. And fortunately, a friend of mine was a good friend of one of the guys who had that original small percentage. And he said, talk to Rob Alexander first. And this is an interesting business thing. This is a fascinating business thing. This is 1994. By this time it's 96. And he said, talk to Rob Alexander. Now, Rob's gone on to publish his own books, to teach and do animation stuff for games and all kinds of stuff. Excellent, excellent watercolorist. And so I got a chance to go to Rob's studio in Seattle. I was living in the Northwest, living up in Everett at that time. Went to his studio in Seattle and talked to him for about an hour. Nice guy, very nice, very quiet fellow. And he looked through my stuff and he said two things, one of which was business related, one of which was art related, and it was very good. He said, art related, I'll give you that one first. He said, you've got no depth. I thought, really? He said, yeah, no, everything is the same level of detail all the way back. You know, you don't have any atmosphere back there. You don't have any depth. And look at this, if you'll note, he's right. Look up in this area over her shoulder. That's too strong. This whole thing is strong. There are no lost edges at all. Notice that? No lost edges. So Rob said, um, he said you need to put some atmosphere in there. Things fade out as they go back. And I said, really? What I didn't know until I talked to him was that my eyesight at that time was so much clearer than most people's. I actually had very, very good. I didn't need these at the time. My eyesight was so good that I could see detail at a distance that most people couldn't. And because I could see that detail, I wanted to put that detail in there. And since I'm working from photographs, the detail was available. And so I would put it in. And Rob said, yeah, everything's flat. Everything's all the same plane. It looks 2D instead of 3D. And I thought, oh boy, okay. The other thing, and I want to talk about the business part of it. He said, Wizards of the Coast has changed their model. We're the only ones that get that percentage anymore. And he said, everybody else now, I'll stop sharing here. Everybody else now is getting what they call work for hire. And work for hire is you do a piece for us, we buy that piece, we own everything. Which means they can do anything they want with that. It used to be you just do the cards. Then they're doing cover art for something, and they're licensing it for postcards, and they're putting it into magazines and all these kinds of other things that get printed. And you get nothing. You get your chunk of money and you're done. And he said, really, really consider whether you want to do that, because the hourly rate by the time you're done there is very low. And I went, shoot. So I was a couple of years too late to actually get in on the Wizards of the Coast thing. And I might have made it. I don't know. There was a lot of good art being done at that time. And these pictures weren't bad. They were pretty good. I was pretty happy with my portfolio. But it's like that era, I kind of had to stop and say, okay, why do I mean, I enjoy fantasy art. It's kind of fun to do. I love the imaginative part of it, trying to put things together. And but is this really where I'm going to go? And so in 1996, 97, I decided, you know what? I'm going to have to move on to other stuff. What do I really love? And what I discovered was that I'll go back to the share here. I love the background as much as as much as I'm working on the figure. The background is really cool. This is what I really want to do. Even here, the figures are okay, but the background was the big deal. All this foliage here, all these rocks, look at that. And here it was mountains. I took a whole mountain scene and I kind of spliced it up a little bit and stuck it in behind her. And that was as much fun to me as actually doing the figure or whoever the character was supposed to be. And I thought, so what do I want to do? I really want to do landscape. And all the other paintings I've been doing in whatever medium were landscape. So I went back, and colored pencil took forever. The reason I went to colored pencil at that time was, and ask any questions you want, because I'm going to talk nonstop otherwise. The reason I went to colored pencil was because I had kids. And the only way you could do something for 10 minutes was with a dry medium that you could put down immediately and go back and do the thing and then come, you could interrupt it constantly. So I was doing colored pencil because it was practical. But it was not practical in terms of how long it took to get anything done. I mean, this is layer upon layer upon layer of very fine work. Both of these are done, by the way, on hot pressed watercolor paper, which I found to be the best. Now, I know Bruce Gomez uses watercolor paper, but he sands the heck out of it to get the sizing off, and it gets this really velvety look. It's just absolutely gorgeous. And he also does a lot of underpainting. This is directly on the paper, and I had a way of building my shadows from indigo to what they called it. I believe they called it Indian red at that time. It's this really dark mahogany color, and then back out. So my greens and stuff went on top. But it was a painstaking process, very painstaking. And so one of the things I really liked to do was I had a wet medium. I don't know if you're familiar with this. Alkyd paint, ALKYD.
Yes.
Alkyd paint was, here we go. So this is a 16 by 20 on canvas board. Alkyd paint started out as house paint, and it's really resilient. It was just very, very tough. And back in the day, I actually did a magazine cover with Alkyd paint. I did it on panel so I could ship it easily, and it was 48 hours from I'm ready to paint to shipping it, which you cannot do with oils. But in 48 hours, you have to use acetone to get this stuff off. And after 48 hours, after a while, you can't get it off with acetone. It is really, really tough. And so I loved it as a wet medium. You just use turpentine. I used what was the medium I used? I don't remember now. But you could use all the mediums that you used with oil, and it was great. And cleanup was soap and water, turpentine and then soap and water. So not a big deal, but it was kind of a smelly thing. And if you had a small space for it, and your wife didn't care for the smell, which is important, then I ended up not using that as much anymore. This is about the epitome here on this painting. This is about the epitome of what I was able to do expressively with Alkyd paint at the time. And this is in 1998, I'm pretty sure. That was about the best I could do with that. And I'd started hiking at that point. And that changed everything. Because I grew up in the mountains. My parents were, well, let's do a little contrast first. My cousins were world record holding mountaineers. They literally had, on the largest active volcano in the world, which is Mount Cotopaxi in Ecuador, they had the first woman to the top, the youngest woman to the top, the oldest woman to the top, and the youngest man to the top at one time. They held those 4 records. And all this without oxygen, and you're over 19,000 feet. And that was my cousins. My parents, on the other hand, would have a picnic somewhere nearby, take the photographs, get back in the car, and drive home. So I didn't get to go mountain climbing with my cousins, which I was terribly jealous of them for doing that. But in the mid-90s, I'm on my own. I started hiking, and I started hiking in the North Cascades, which was amazing. And this is one of the trails, just a view of one of the trails that I loved. And I thought, I really like forest interiors. Can I do it? And this was as close as I could get at that time. So I continued on. I'll stop the share here. No, we'll just go to the next one. I continued on to do, I mean, lots of drawings, trying to do lots of drawings, doing more paintings. Uh, it wasn't until 2000 that my now wife gave me a set of pastels because she thought, well, he likes to draw, you know, and get him a set of pastels. And it was, what were they? They were, it was a classic student grade. You could pick it up at any art store kind of pastel. And I had that, and I had some Strathmore colored paper that I'd bought earlier for whatever reason. Never really did anything with it. But the pastels went on the colored paper, and I went, oh, this is cool. I mean, even though, because the binder was so bad, it would just fall off the paper, most of it. But just the fact that you were putting pigment directly down was exciting. I was really stoked about that. So I was getting, I'm trying to remember, it was art something, the pastels. But I was actually getting exciting textures that I'd never had before. And I was getting colors and learning that, because I'd done layering. I knew layering from colored pencil, right? But that's wax. Here we have just binder and pigment. And I was learning how to mix things up and get better mud and get worse mud and all that kind of stuff. And so I worked it and worked it and worked it with as much as I could with those pastels. And Ping said, that's pretty cool. And she went out. The sets of pastels that this woman has blessed me with is incredible. She got a set of 12 Rembrandts. Game changer. Total game changer. Here I am now putting actual color down, and it would stay. And it was good color. And I learned it to put different marks down. It was a whole lot better. And I got some Canson Metal paper, and it was really difficult. And if the one side was so textured I couldn't use it at all, and the other side was okay, but I just fought with it and fought with it. And then she got me a set for my birthday. She got me a set of Sennelier. I remember distinctly. I was painting upstairs, and I came running downstairs into the kitchen where she happened to be, and I think she was sitting at the table. And I came down, and I just went, and then I ran back up to paint again. I don't think I said anything. I was just so excited because it was amazing. A soft one, and it would go and it would stay. And you could put a mark down, and it was amazing, and the colors were beautiful. And oh, that was another game changer right there. And then she bought me a set of a large, 3 boxes of Mount Vision. And Mount Vision was amazing because with the Sennelier, some of them are even softer, depending on which pigment they are, and some of them are so hard that they'll just crack. There were a couple of teals that I just literally threw out because I couldn't use them. But the Mount Visions were very consistent, and they were larger sticks, and you could break them in half or something and really get wonderful lines and edges and stuff. So I started painting larger. And it was cool to be able to do that. And I got a lot of muddy, larger paintings out of it to begin with. And then I moved to, this is another material that most people don't know about. Fabriano just now came out with, what are they calling it? Is it the Chroma? Or is
Chroma, yeah.
Is it Chroma? Or
Yep.
Chromo?
Chroma.
Chroma, thank you.
C-O-M-A. And Dakota, you can get a whole pack of every color.
Oh, how much is that?
Oh, God, you would ask me that. I just
No, I mean, if you know.
Oh yeah, they actually introduced it as a special at a special price, but I got a pack of small, like quarter sheets of every color, and I'm just dying to start it. Otherwise, you've got to buy 10 full sheets for about $95. So
Yeah. So here's the other option for that. The Chroma they just came out with that I'm happy about, but their color set is limited. And they are relatively muted colors, as I recall. So here's what I was painting on, and I'll show you. Let me get get the right stuff. Here we go. Fabriano makes, and these are like super intense. They make what they call vice versa. I want to see if I can find you like some of the most intense ones. Here you go.
Oh.
That's Canson. Here's a great example. This is vice versa. They sell it as cardstock. It's 100% cotton rag. It is absolutely acid free. It is color fast. I've actually had these in the sun by mistake, and they hold pretty well. They're not perfect, but they do hold pretty well. But yeah, in proper lighting, they are color fast. And the reason they call it vice versa is because the two sides have a slightly different texture. Slightly, dramatically different texture. They sell it as cardstock because of the textures and the colors are so beautiful. But they're brilliant colors, and the range is like 30 different colors. So it's a lot. You can get everything from a killer red and orange, and I mean like neon almost orange, to a nice deep green and this sort of thing, and a charcoal black, which is really nice. So on the one side, they have a laid finish. It's very distinctive. And I have used it to great effect. You get, you know how it is with a canvas, your edges get kind of broken up anyway. If you want to get that look, you can definitely do it with this. And it will hold way more layers than you would think. Or you can flip it to the other side, which has totally random texture. Even more random than the back side of Canson. And this stuff was, I think, $4 a sheet, $5 a sheet. Full on 19 by 27 sheets for $5. And again, and it's you can hear it. This is heavy cardstock. It's really quite nice. And so I was painting on that as well, and I really enjoyed it. So that was good. I was able to do large paintings on that. You could get a beautiful indigo blue. I had several on that. Oh, here's one. Yeah. This is painted on Fabriano vice versa.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Isn't it? It just, you get so much you can do with it. It's really intense, and you get very nice textures out of it. It takes way more pastel than you would think. And I was very happy with that. So that was cool. So I had that paper, and I went to talk to them, by the way, the first IAPS I went to 2 years ago. I went to the Fabriano rep and said, "Why are you marketing this as cardstock? This is pastel paper. Tell people it's pastel paper. It's awesome. Nobody knows." And I just bought it because it was pretty. And it was a little, again, the texture looked good. And I thought, oh, what the heck? And it turned out to be really good. So I still have a stash of that I've cut down since, so I have 8 by 10s of it.
So Mark, where are you getting that from? Can you get that from Dakota?
I used to get it from Blick.
Oh, boy.
But the best way to get it now is basically to be Amazon. And you can still get it for reasonable prices. It's just go look for their vice versa. They used to call it ELLEERRE, and nobody knew how to pronounce it or what it meant. And it's it's French. I did not know. It's Fabriano, right? Or it just did not make any sense to me, but it was really good. So they started calling it vice versa, and so it has a vice side and a versa side, as it were. But yeah, check it out on Amazon, Fabriano vice versa. The beautiful colors. If you want bright colors to paint on, that's the way to get it. But I am very happy that they came out with the chroma, because I believe it's exactly this without the late finish. From what I could see, it was exactly this. The colors are more muted, which may serve you better. It all depends. Italian for L and R. Oh, is that all it is? L and R, left and right, maybe? Maybe that's all it is. Thanks, April. I saw that just now. That's funny. Yeah. Okay. LR in Spanish, right? Okay. So that makes sense. But I never knew how to pronounce it, and and it's much easier to say vice versa. People know what you're talking about. But again, beautiful paper. So I would definitely try it, because the cost is so low. You can get really good stuff for a relatively low cost. But the chroma, I'm very happy they came out with that, because just having the pastel specific paper, I think, is a good thing. And I'm very happy they did it. What else? Okay, so I was painting on the Fabriano. and I'd gotten up to my Mount Visions, and it really made a huge difference for me. And so I started painting a lot and painting as big as I could. But it was sort of fits and starts because you got a full time job and you're trying to raise kids and all that stuff happens. And so I just kept going. And we moved to California after all the kids were in college, and Central Valley, California. So we're just south of Modesto, south of Sacramento. And the way I used to describe that was we were uh, an hour and a half from everything and 1 hour away from absolutely nothing. It's this huge. Ping goes, that's not fair. It's a beautiful place, and it's like, oh, that's true. It is. It is. But within an hour and a half, you could be in Yosemite National Park. From our garage to the standing at the foot of the General Sherman tree in Sequoia Kings Canyon was 2 hours and 35 minutes, and you could be at the coast, and you next, like you could be in Berkeley in an hour and a half. You could be on the coast. It was just fantastic. Michael's. Oh, car stuck at Michael's. Interesting. Sorry, I'm just catching the note here from Becky. Um, so we started getting out a lot, and I started painting a lot of the Central California area, coastal hills, all this kind of stuff. And for the first time, I started actually entering shows. And I entered a couple of local shows in Modesto and got in, and much to my delight, won an award, and then a couple of awards, and then the Pastel Society of the West Coast had their show, and I thought, well, heck, why not? So I entered a painting in it, and it got in, and I was just shocked, and so I went down to the Triton Museum to see the show, and I'm just gobsmacked. I'm walking through this whole thing, just going, oh my gosh! And they took my painting in. Thanks, April. I'm noticing once in a while Michael's even has ampersand it equals pastel board and aqua board. So that, yeah, Michael's is kind of a sometimes works and sometimes doesn't, isn't it? I mean,
Right.
in some ways, it's like, oh, cool, you got all this stuff, and then like, do you still? Um, but anyway, so I got into the show and was kind of stunned that my work had ended up in this show. And I honestly, I mean, I've been looking at Pastel Journal for a while, but I really didn't understand just how intense the competition was to get in there. And I didn't really know until I went to pick up my painting from the Triton Museum. And this lovely guy from Vietnam with this beaming smile comes to pick up his painting and introduces himself as Kung Nguyen. And if you know Kung, you know how wonderful he is. He just introduced himself and said, "Isn't this great? We get pictures in the painting. We're picking up our stuff." He said, "I've tried 3 times to get in here, and this is the first time I've actually gotten in." And I'm like, "Holy cow! This was my first try, and it actually went in." So again, it fortune shined and all that good stuff. But I got to meet Kung, and that was really cool because at that point he was still working for Yahoo. He was actually designing icons for Yahoo, and hadn't gone full time painting yet. And he and I have kept in touch, and he's been a terrific uh, encouragement and a guy with more experience ahead of you on the path. Really, really good about that. A solid guy, wonderful teacher. Um, and what he told me over time was how much it matters with your career, the people who come into your life, who help. And I've been thinking about this ever since. There's a guy named Andy Andrews. If you've ever read any of his books, they're fascinating. He has made it very clear. He said, listen, all of your encouragement, opportunities, and ideas come from other people. We can only do so much by ourselves, even as artists. I mean, we're creative people. We're coming up with stuff all the time, right? We're conceptualizing, we're trying new things, we're doing this. But the opportunities you cannot do by yourself. Opportunities always involve someone else. And what Kang said was that here was a curator from a gallery who basically said, Kung, your stuff is good enough. Here's what you need to do. And actually helped him walk through the process to get where he is now. And Kung now teaches all over the world and has his own ebooks out and has published other stuff and won award after award after award and gotten commissions from all around the world that are just outstanding. And his work is amazing because he works at it so hard. But also, the reason he was able to get out was because somebody told him, here's what you need to do, here's who you need to talk to, here's what you tell them. And it helps. It really does help. I found people, just connections I've had through Facebook have been amazing. So let me fast forward a little bit. So I got into the Pastel Society of the West Coast show, and I was just thrilled. And the next year that I tried again, I actually also got in again. And if I'd been a member, I would have been a signature member by the third year because I got in. And it's like, if you think of these things ahead of time, you could try it, but I didn't. And then at that point, the kids were all getting out of college, and we wanted to try to do something a little bit different. Ping decided to retire. My wife decided to retire, and she had earned it. Boy, has she earned it. And so we thought, how can we kind of bring everything down so that we can manage financially better? And then maybe Mark can do something different from being a business analyst, which was what I was at the time, working for an IT department. And so we had this opportunity, and again, your opportunities come from other people, right? Opportunity to live in the same apartment that Ping lived in when she was in high school in Taiwan for basically the cost of property tax, because it's paid off, right? And the folks said, hey, we just remodeled this place, totally refurbished. If you want to live there, sure. And so we decided to downsize everything from a 5-bedroom house to 2 pallets of stuff, 4 suitcases, 2 backpacks, and a couple of carry-ons. And that was it. That was everything we owned. And we moved lock, stock, and barrel to this apartment in Taiwan. And it was quite an adventure. It was really amazing. But the first thing I noticed when I tried to paint with pastels was the humidity. And it was like, oh gosh. I struggled. I simply couldn't get it to work. Everything felt gummy. I was painting on Canson and Fabriano, and all the Senes just felt like they felt like mud and clay rather than actually painting. And so nothing I did felt good. And it was like, oh shoot, this is really frustrating. And I thought I was going to be doing more painting, but I couldn't actually paint with that. So I kind of, after a while, I was too frustrated, and I stopped painting with pastels, and I went to acrylic. And I started painting larger canvases with acrylic. I painted small canvases with acrylic. I painted on paper, just, trying to keep the art going. And it was good. It was good. I learned a lot, but it's not pastels. That's true. So fast forward to 2018, and I must have been complaining on Facebook. I remember how this went. I think I was complaining about not being able to paint with pastels on Facebook. And Judy Tolar, bless her, said, are you using sanded paper? I said, no. And she goes, oh, for pity's sake, use sanded paper. I'm like, okay. I had one little scrap of Wallace left over. And also I remembered Kang Nguyen. I actually had shown a little video of him painting with pastel pencils. And it was the most astounding thing to watch him. It was this way, with just barely with the pressure of the pencil on the surface. I thought, oh my gosh, that's such a light touch. I didn't think it was possible to paint with such a light touch. But yeah, and you watch him do it, and he's just building these beautiful layers. It was just so cool. And I thought, okay, so that was 2 bits. And then Susan's story from Pastel Society of America gave me the kick in the pants that I really needed. She said, where there's a will, there's a way, Mark. All excuses gone. I mean, there was nothing to say after that. So I got the Wallace paper scrap out, and I started scraping away at it with the pastel pencils really lightly, and I thought, this is cool. I can do this. And it was so much more, I had so much more control with it, uh, with a pastel pencil. And I thought, okay, this is good. This is good. So I was building layers. It's like colored pencil. I know how this works. And I was building layers and kind of made that work. I have a picture of it somewhere, but I'm not going to go hunt for it right now because it's um, more time than it's probably worth. But so I started painting with that, and then Isabel V. Lim, if you're familiar with her, she's a Singaporean living in Hong Kong, paints these amazing things. Her ability to do realism with the most abstract stuff is incredible, and her ability to do abstraction with the most real stuff is also incredible. I I don't know anybody that does what she does like that. So Isabel Lim we've been talking back and forth on Facebook, and she said, "Hey, I'm working with this paper company. They do these beautiful sanded papers. It's called Ming Art. They're from China, and I tell you what, I'll send you a sample book." And she did, and she sent me, um, oh my gosh, a complete book of every single paper they made. It was about this big. It was about 4 by 6, 5 by 7 at the most. And but every single sheet was there, and I thought, you know what? Rather than just kind of scratching away on it, I'm going to make a painting on every single painting of this, on every single sheet of this paper from this book. And I want to show you what came of that. Here are two of them. So here we'll share the screen again. Here we go. This is not quite 5 by 7 inches in actual size. On Fabrian, on Ming Arts, what they call their fine paper, and then this one is on their premium, what they call their premium. And also, same size.
So
These
Mark,
are like three. If you took 3 business cards and lined them up, that's about how big this is.
are these is that a sanded paper?
It's a sanded paper, and they also had a velour, which I'd never tried before. And that was fantastic. So here again, here's another person showing up in my life and said, "Here, try this," and changed everything. She also then wrote to me later and said, "Hey, by the way, they're having a show at the Ming Art Gallery in China, Suzhou, China. And this is only was it the third biennial? They do it every 2 years." And she said, "You should submit something to this." So she got me the information, and I submitted a painting, and it was this one. And I painted this on Ming Art Premium. Um, Actually, what you're seeing here is after having wiped off the bottom section 3 times and painting it again. So this is like the bottom is like the fourth time through, getting that right. Um, and this painting got into the show and won an award. And they said, "Hey, you won an award. If you would be willing to donate the painting to the gallery, we'll pay your expenses and your wife's expenses to come over here and be part of the festivities for the week." And we said, "Sure." So again, other people's and for the opportunities. And so we went over there and just had a ball. It was really, really cool, to see all these other people doing stuff. And this is where I first saw Tara Will. This is where I met Dorothea Schultz, who does these amazing, they look like old master paintings of things like jam jars. And they're they're unbelievably cool. Who else? There were several different people. Brian Bailey, who does uh, incredible textures. Oh, absolutely amazing. So that was where this kind of started taking off a bit. We decided to move back to the States from Taiwan, uh, mostly because of the language. Actually, Ping is born and raised there, so she was perfectly fluent. I found I have a harder time learning the language unless I can actually read it. And reading Chinese is next to impossible for me because they're all like every character is a word. And if you know 3,000 words, you have to know those. And there's no pronunciation help in those words, for me anyway. So we decided to move back, and I brought a spare kit back and started painting on Strathmore art again because it was nearby and it was inexpensive. And you can get that at Blick. You can get it via Amazon. And this is Pastel. This is 8x10 Pastel on Strathmore art again. Again, inexpensive paper, acid free. They sell it as colored pencil paper. It is phenomenal for pastel. You wouldn't know how much it can actually take. And this one also. Now both of these paintings are currently in Scotland. I sent 5 pieces of work up there, 2 pen and inks and 3 pastels. And one of the pastels sold to a lovely lady in New York, which was great. So it went all the way to Scotland and then had to get shipped all the way back to New York. But yeah, this is the kind of stuff you can do again on relatively inexpensive surfaces. These made it all the way over to Scotland and back, and they did fine. So I'm very happy with what can be done with that. Do you have any specific questions? Because I'm rambling on here, and I've already gone 45 minutes.
You know, Mark, I think I just wanted to comment on Becky's comment about the fact that she said that Don Emerson recommends a cardstock, and we just interviewed her last month or the month before, and she does use a cardstock like scrapbooking paper because
Yeah,
and some of it has like the linen finish on one side and then it's got a different finish and it's all acid free. And
yeah,
so you can get all these beautiful colors. So I think it's similar to what you're the vice versa and so on. But anyway,
that
so
totally makes sense.
yeah, so Mark, I think it's always great for somebody with your experience to share with the audience, just tips that you have for, either technique or, business, and you've given us some,
Okay,
business tips and things like that. And then I
excuse
hope
me.
you feel like you have some time to maybe do a little demo
I can do a
on
bit of a
you,
demo. Yeah, you
because
know what?
I
I'm
want to
good.
show that.
If you guys have time, I have time. I mean, I'm good for however long you want to go.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, let me show you a little bit of what I like to do. Because I do have something set up on the easel. Let me show you that. Here's what I'm currently working on. So this is if you look at the reference here, you can see this is a picture of early fall in Oregon's Silver Falls State Park. An absolutely gorgeous place. This is on the Trail of 10 Falls, and they are not kidding. This is just waterfall after waterfall after waterfall. And this is going into one of the last ones you can get to on the route we usually take. Um, and I absolutely loved this, and I've painted it a couple of times. And I wanted to paint it large. So I'm painting it on, this right here is Hahnemühle Angre paper. It's kind of a lemony cream color, which is not necessarily conducive to what I do most of the time, but I was curious to see what I could do with it. Let me talk about the process that it took to get to here, and then we'll take it a little bit further. The process to get to here was painting the whole thing directly with the colors that you see onto the page. And my thought was, at the time, that I would just paint direct and see how I could go. So you're gonna get whatever texture you lay down, you're gonna get whatever, no smearing if I can help it. And what I found was I got too heavy too fast. And I thought, well, okay, I have a couple of options. And what I decided to do was rather than just scrap it and do another one, I decided I'm going to wipe it off. And I have used this. BF has seen me do this. And it's insane because you just painted something and now you're going to, and smearing is anathema to a bunch of people, but not to me. I go back to Brian Bailey, something he told me, which I absolutely loved. I was talking about his textures and how he can do a thin veil of silk with a backlit figure behind it, and you just get this amazing mix of stuff. It's just so beautiful. How in the world do you get that texture? And he said, hey, anything that gets you the look you want is fair game. And I believe that with all my heart. So we use whatever ability we have at whatever materials we got to get the look we want. And so what I did with this one was I took a super cheap brush. This is an artist brush from the dollar store. You get 3 of them in a pack, and I just wiped it off. So I wiped off a bunch of stuff, and while I'm wiping it off, I'm actually also wiping it into the tooth. So I get this very fine, what I call a dry underpainting. There's no alcohol involved here. This is all dry. But then, in order to get this you see the texture I got in here? There's a ton of texture going on. How does that happen? That's this tool. This is a handheld eraser. Now this is the square version that you can get in Asia. For some reason they don't have it here. They have the round one here. And I'm actually out of refills on this, so I had to use the square one. But I go in and I basically just erase out whatever I want. And I take it right down to the paper if I feel like it. But you can get an amazing amount of seemingly random texture with this tool. And so I'm really happy with it. So I just basically erase my way through a few things here. And you can see I'm getting higher highlights if I want. I can always back those off just a bit by pushing some stuff into it. But this is actually in sort of what I would consider the middle stage. So I painted the whole thing first, didn't like it, smeared it in, wiped it off. I wipe it off with a paper towel. I've done that. And then I started erasing out so I can get more of the light coming through and more texture coming through. So nothing in here is heavy right now. This is a very, very light coat of pastel. I have tons of tooth left. This paper, as you can see, stands up to that kind of abuse. I mean, taking an eraser to it, and it was fine. It can take it, no problem. But now I can go in with the pastels again and start playing with, let's see, where do I want to start? I'm going to bring up my reference here first. Where did I put that? Here it is. So now I've got my reference where I can see it. Oh yeah, we got lots of wonderful saturation we can do here. So looking back at my reference, I'm going, okay, I want to get really nice saturated color down here. I want to get my shadows to be deep, but I want my greens to show up first. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to do what I want in here is I want to play with the temperature. So I'm going to go in with, what have I got here? Well, that's a pretty good one, but I'm going to go with even more blue than that. Is this it? Yeah. So I'm going in with a very, very light blue-green. This is a Sennelier. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to put in some of these blue-greens right over top of these erasures. And I can fill it in if I want, or I can let that erasure just sort of show through a little. And you notice I'm not doing light over dark at this point exactly, but look at all of a sudden I get saturation. All of a sudden this dull look starts getting interesting again. I knew this is experience. You know, you've tried it before, and I got frustrated and wiped it off. Actually, that experience was one of the greatest teaching moments for me. I had a painting of Smith Rock that I really loved, the area, and the colors in the rocks are so unreal. It's hard to even paint it, but it looked so cool that I kept trying, and I wiped it off 3 times, and the 4th time I looked at it and it was all this subtlety. And that's how I learned to get this. I learned actually that you can get all of this subtlety here just by wiping it off and letting some of the colors stay and some of the colors not. But I love what's happening right now. If I look at this, all of a sudden, just by putting this really saturated, cool blue-green down, it's already starting to jump. I love it. Get a little bit more of it over here. And we're going to take this. I love the way this kind of sweeps off the side here. So you can see my reference. You can see sort of where I'm going with this. And right now I'm just playing with it. The other thing I want to point out is, remember I talked about how I tried to get everything perfect back in the day? I wanted to be exactly representational. I tried really, really hard to do that. And it was okay. But what it taught me was two things. One, yes, you can paint precisely if you work at it, and that's what it takes. It takes work. But if I paint too precisely, I find that it gets stiffer and stiffer and stiffer. Now, we have BF Reed online here, and she is the master of not getting stiff while still painting precisely. That's just mind-boggling, the stuff you do, BF. Because your sweeping fabrics and your surfaces are absolutely. So I don't know how you make them so alive. I think part of it is the fact that you do abstracts the way you do. I don't know. I'm not able to do that level of precision and still make it feel like it's alive. But what I have discovered is that I like back when I was a kid, when I was doing the house in the sand with everything flying everywhere. I like that kind of looseness. I like that kind of energy. And I love being able to paint that in with a pastel stick just by making strokes across stuff. So look at this. We've already made huge progress in terms of saturation just by laying over top of some of these erasures. And they hold their texture that way too. And if I go in with, let's go in with another one. This is one of my brand new Terry Ludwigs, and I absolutely love this color. I bought one really good green. Oh my gosh, I love this thing.
That's a beautiful green.
And look at what we can do with just starting to carve away in between these so that we get temperature shift and a little bit of value. I'm very, very light touch. I am not putting a lot of pressure down. Super light touch. But it allows me to build gradually, which I really like. Can you see how that works? Yeah. And this kind of bring this over here a little bit.
And Mark, is this the premiere paper?
No, this is the Hanimuna. This is Hanimuna Angre. It's this paper here.
Okay.
Yeah, Angre Pastel. And I'm working on a full, what is it, A2 size, so I can get 16 by 20 out of it. And I'm very happy with how expressive this is. What I'm learning to do that I really like is to make that grid pattern work for me. And part of what I've learned to make that grid pattern work for me is how much of it I can push into the tooth early and how much I want to glide over the top afterwards. So right now I'm getting really exciting textures that didn't exist when I first painted it down because I didn't have the complexity that the multiple layers does. And by having painted over this, I'm now getting, having originally painted a bunch of colors down, I now get to play with what's underneath and put other layers on top that are actually showing through, even though it's a very grid-like pattern, like I said. You can actually see the grid. I was talking with Natasha Eisenhower, and she was saying that, yeah, she tried the Angler paper as well and struggled with the grid. And I said, yeah, me too. But if you use it to your advantage, it can be cool. It's like canvas again.
Right.
So here I am, just, not quite filling in the tooth. I've got this beautiful Terry Ludwig, which is wonderfully soft and creamy, just like the Jack Richardsons are. I'm very happy with how I get to just take deft strokes. And again, not a lot of pressure, but I do vary my pressure so I can get a little bit more, a little bit less, depending on what I want. But this is starting to come together already, just from where we were. Another thing I like to talk about, and I've got a workshop coming up that's going to focus on this specifically. This is a week from today. I'm doing a workshop on suggesting detail. And this is exactly where this comes from. If you look at the actual photograph and you look at my painting, you can see there are similarities, but not exact. And the reason I do that is twofold. One, it keeps me from being a slave to the reference. And two, it focuses more on what does this place bring out emotionally for me. And I find that question to be the important one. So if I step away from pure depiction and focus more uh, on communication of emotion, what do I like about this? I love the richness. I love the fact that everything is turning into color. I love the fact that we have all this foliage that has been growing all summer long and is now just about ready to start to say goodbye. And we have these huge, uh, we have deciduous trees and we have pines, or firs in this case, all in the same place. And the firs are going to hang on to their stuff. And the deciduous are going to say goodbye for this year. And that's what's happening in the middle of this gorgeous place.
And
So
Marcia,
I want
your
to see
workshop-
color, I want to see texture, and I want to feel that abundance flowing around.
So the workshop that you're doing next week, is that an online one?
That one's online, yeah. Everything on that one is online. It's Zoom. It's one day. We'll start at 8 o'clock in the morning um, Pacific time, because that's about 11 o'clock East Coast. And we'll take a break somewhere in the middle, and we'll go until 2 o'clock in the afternoon East Pacific time. And it's fun. And this one's going to be particularly hands-on, which I like. I've done several that are mostly demo. This one's going to be more of a combination of demo and exercises, because there are things you can do, and I will show you a piece of it now.
And so Mark, then you're doing a workshop on the August 24 and 25 for the PSWC. And
Yes.
so that's a 2-day, and then what's your focus going to be on that one?
The focus on that one, oh shoot, I'll have to look it on the calendar because I'm forgetting what I called it. But this is going to be a fun one. Where are we? Going for feel. Yes, that's exactly what I want to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of the more specific techniques, and we're going to focus on how does this feel to me. Remember I talked about the emotional content? That's what the 2-day workshop is going to be all about. Identifying the emotional content, identifying your resonance with the scene in front of you that you're painting, and then figuring out how to bring that out with pastels, with some different materials perhaps, or different techniques perhaps, or different color combinations. We're going to talk about all that. And that's going to be really fun, because that, to me right now, the going for feel is the essence of what I'm trying to do. It is the most important piece of my painting experience right now, is how do we, I'm painting because it's beautiful, right? Or because it's moody, or because it's exciting or dramatic or what. But what is it that's important about that to me, and how do I get that to somebody else? Can I bring that out for the viewer? And what can I do that would actually accomplish that? So look at this. I put 2 colors down, and all of a sudden that whiffy looking thing has gotten so much more intense. And we haven't even touched the yellows yet. So let's do that.
On your workshops, then are those recorded? So if somebody can't be there for the live
Yes.
one, then you could sign up.
Yes,
and
absolutely. And we record the Pastel Society of the West Coast one too, don't we? That one's also being...
That's up to you. I mean, you can do
Oh,
it.
absolutely. I'll do it. Yeah. So here's what I like to do. I'll record the whole thing, and I'll record this particular 3-frame thing that you're looking at right now. I will record that specifically also separately. So when I put the workshop up, whoa, baby. My gosh, 3 dots and everything went crazy over there. When I put the workshop up online, everybody who was in the workshop will have a private link to it. We'll share the private link to it, so that you can actually see that for at least a month.
Okay.
And I am perfectly happy to field questions pretty much at any time. But we also do Padlet, which is great, where you can actually post on a bulletin board what you're working on, and I can actually interact with you directly from there. So that's really fun. And yes, we'll record it. And I found that there are people who cannot actually be there for the day, that still get a lot out of just the recording that shows up. It takes me a couple of days to get that process. It's a lot of processing power, and YouTube takes a while to actually upload that. But once it's up there, it's good for a month at least. And
Okay.
you guys can go back to it as often as you want. So I'm very happy to do that. Okay, check this out. I'm gonna go with yellow, and I have to think about it. So here we go. But yeah, any other questions like that, please let me know. But the Pastel Society of the West Coast one we will definitely do, and we'll have both days full bore up online, so you can see it. But look at this, just hints of this. I'm not laying down a whole lot of pastel here. I can rub it a little bit, but it's not going to smear much. But check out what happens.
That's amazing. That's beautiful.
Isn't this fantastic? It's just these little suggestions then. And again, we talk about suggesting detail, and that's one of the things I'm going to bring up in ours thing on the 24th is how much depiction do we have to do to accomplish the communication of the emotion we want? And a lot of it is remarkably subtle. We really don't have to do an awful lot to get what we want. See, here I'm starting to get that intensity. You can start feeling that, okay, fall is coming, and here comes the yellow. So you can see this is what have I got here? This is a Jack Richardson, and it's gorgeous. Really like these.
So Mark, there was a note on the chat line that asked about what the surface was again. If you'd say that again.
Oh yeah, it's the Hahnemühle Angre Pastel. This here. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I like it. And this is the like I said, that pack comes with 2 sheets of everyone and then 3 sheets of white, I think. I found the white to be more useful than I thought. Because I'm doing the dry underpainting, I can get a lot of different looks with it. And this is kind of a, like I said, sort of a lemony cream color, which I was thinking, what in the world am I going to do with that? And it's actually working pretty well for this because it's a cool yellow, and I put this really warm yellow down, and they really vibrate nicely. So I'm pretty stoked about how that works. And again, a lot of it depends on how much you're actually going to leave the paper showing, which you can do. And I really enjoy some of that sometimes. I'm going to do these little lines here. I like how that leads the eye off. A little more down here. Oh, this is really, really making a difference. I love it. I'm so glad I had the nerve to wipe this off and start again. Start again from like I said, the middle section as I refer to it here. Wow. And like I said, I'm painting very, very light. And if I want to, I can really punch it. But it's a question of, what do you gain for that? And right now, I love the subtlety of what I'm getting. And the fact that it's saturating as quickly as it is means I really don't need to work it hard at all. Wow, this is fun. Okay, the other thing I want to get in here, because again, this is fall, right? Oh gosh, that is way more than I was getting before. I love it a lot. There's this interesting looking, kind of a mauve pinkish color in here, which I think is fascinating. I'm going to give this a little bit more yellow tone just in here. We'll play that against the more teal blue-green look. There we go. Wow, it's starting to flow. This is cool. Now there's this fascinating color that it's almost pinkish, and I'm going to push it pink even further. This is a Mount Vision I've got in my hand here. Let me show you just how pink this is. Pretty darn pink. And what I find is if I'm super judicious with it, I can put a little bit up in the trunk here. Oh, that's nice. Sets that off. And I can use it as just sort of the accent. Oh, that's cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a little bit in here. There's a little bit of it down in here. And we can play with it anywhere that it leads the eye well. So what I'll tend to do, excuse me, I talk a lot about color harmony. And what I mean by that is, are they working together? Or do you have some note that's sticking out? I'll use musical terms a lot because I love music and I think very much in musical terms. Um, so what I want to make sure is that if I'm going to use this, if I'm going to use this color someplace, then it should exist elsewhere in the thing. It shouldn't be isolated in one spot because in nature they never are. And what I found is that you can actually suggest color by just putting like a little sheen of it here, like I just did, a little sheen of it here, over here, or you can put a dot. A dot may be all it takes. So say, for example, if I put a dot and a dot and a dot there, the eye can still see that. Now, it's a little harder on screen, but the eye itself can still see that. It knows, oh, okay, you got some of this color there. I'm just putting a little bit of it in here on this trunk, which will eventually change, but yeah, here we go. There's a couple of dots down here. And I might paint what eventually feels like a single leaf, and a dot may be all it takes to do that. Or I can just do a little bit of a sheen of it here, more of a sheen of it down here. I kind of like how this works. Leads the eye up into here with a few dots. Another thing we'll talk about in all of these workshops is how to use rhythm and marks to make a natural looking landscape. And the reason I say natural is because, you know, if you've ever been in a managed forest where they're doing forestry so they can have like wood pulp or something like that, they line up their trees very evenly so they get even growth. They can harvest it. It's a crop, really. Nature doesn't do that. Nature doesn't do crops. Nature decides that, hey, if this fits here, it'll work, and as long as it stays, you know, as long as it's working, it can continue. And then when something comes up that no longer supports it, then it'll stop. And all of that is literally organic, right? And so the patterns that you get in nature are not mathematical in that way unless they're fractal. You know how a tree, if you look at one branch, it's basically a small tree.
Right.
You look at one twig, it's basically a smaller branch. All of these things are fractal. And I find that fascinating because what you end up with then is a musical rhythm that is not a Sousa march. Sousa march would be 1, 2, 3, 4, here come the tree trunks. And nature is more like jazz. Nature is a little bit here, yeah, yeah, baby, maybe we need some more there. I don't know. Looks like this, looks like that. It's syncopated. It's organic. It has that. It has more flow to it and less predictability, which is great. But it is always, and this is fascinating to me, it is always balanced. And even in contrast, it's balanced. I'm trying to figure out what I mean by that because I was trying to come up with the words just now. It's balanced because it's logical. We have light that comes in certain places. Let's do some highlights just to get that light in here. And I'm going to use. I'm painting on the outside edge. I do this a lot. You'll see me do this kind of thing. I want to see what color I've got because all my colors end up looking the same color after a while. And I rarely clean them off because I hate to lose any pastel. So I tend not to clean my pastels at all. This is a pretty warm white. It's got a little bit of a reddish tint to it. And because we're going against the yellow, the yellowish, this right here is about the paper color. I don't know if you can see that. Right there, that's about the paper color. So white is going to actually look whiter than that. There, you can see a little bit of white happened right there. I don't know if that's obvious. See if I can bring you in a little further. I'm going to zoom in here for a bit. A little bit more obvious. Hopefully that's clear. And I'm going to accentuate this bit here. See that? Yep. See those two spaces here? Yeah, that's more obvious. I'm literally painting white space. I'm painting negative space. I'm painting the space between the stuff just to open that up. And by painting those little bits here, I was going somewhere with a thought process and I lost it. By painting these little bits, balance. We were talking about balance. Balance is going to be about um, light versus dark. Let's see, I'm off on the side here now. Let me shift this so you can see where I'm working. Let's work this bit right here. Edges, all of these things are believable. How am I going to say this? There is a what inside my head I have what James Gurney, the illustrator, refers to as the artist's internal visual catalog. What made me know that putting a little white space between those two would make those two look more like trunks? Because I've been looking at a long time. And I don't even have to look at the reference to see that, yeah, I can put something else in there. And a few dots will open this up. And I have now a thicker trunk and a thinner trunk and a branch, whereas before it was just sort of a smeared blob. And I know it looks right because I've been looking at it a long time. And I find that fascinating. That we can actually get to the point where we can start improvising a little bit like I am here, saying, yeah, kind of like that. That's what gives us the ability to go for the feel, is our level of observation. Oh, I love how that broke up.
That looks great.
You know what I mean? It just, and these are dots. I'm putting little dots down with a piece of pastel. It's amazing. Let's open this up over here just a little bit.
So Mark, Susie's asking, do you do your darks last?
I vary that. Sometimes I'll do the darks because I really want to know where they are, and I want to make sure that I know what my value range is. But what I have found really does help is to go back and forth. So I tend to work the entire painting, for one thing, almost all the time. And then I also tend to do, like, I'll do a color and say, where do I need this right now? And I'll put a color down. And if I were to go in and do the darks right now, check this out. This is so fun. Let's do this with an indigo. Clean this one up. This is one of those beautiful Terry Ludwigs I just picked up, and I'm thrilled to death with it. Because look what happens. This is a really good, let's see, where am I? Indigo blue. There we go. Let me zoom back a little bit so we can see it again. Here we go. Thank goodness for technology. You know, think about it. Here I am in Portland, Oregon, and you guys get to be anywhere you want, and I can, I can still show you this stuff live. I just think it's fantastic. So, okay, so I've gotten some idea of what my colors are, but I really need to define a few things. And one of the things I need to define is this trunk. But what's really important to me also is to make sure I understand where these shadows flow. And I'm going to paint the negative space. I'm going to paint the shadows, and then I can paint stuff over it, or I don't have to. And part of that's because I did my dry underpainting. I can actually say, yeah, let's get these shadows to darken up a bit. Instantly darker. And yet, because I'm painting very lightly, if you were to look at it up close, let me see if I can zoom in a bit on it there. You can see how much texture there is. You see all that texture there. This has got it's not the paper showing through, it's the underpainting showing through, which gives me tons of complexity. And if I want to get rid of that, I've got multiple ways to do it. If I really want to, where's my stump blender? Here it is. It looks the same color as everything else. This is a very dusty stump blender. And I can simply take that and push it into the paper. And there are times when I will do that just so that I don't have that tooth sitting out there. Because too much texture sometimes feels wrong. But look at that. All of a sudden we have that depth again. Let's back this up so you can see it in context. Where are we? Shoot, I dragged the wrong portion of it and it's hard to recenter again. Here we go. Sorry if I'm making anybody seasick. All right, here we go. Let's just do it from here. There. Now look at how dark that got, and this is not the darkest dark yet. It could be. If I want to go with a lighter thing, it might as well be the darkest dark. But we'll see. I can put in some more of these here. I can accentuate this trunk, bring it forward. This is how I draw tree trunks much of the time. This guy definitely needs to grow. Just a point of issue for me. My trees always get fatter the longer I paint, so I have to start with them too thin because they grow. And the only way to get them to go smaller is to actually cut them out from the side. So I'm going to judiciously work these bits, very deliberate strokes. I'm lining it up, pressing in, and pulling off as I drag away because I get a really nice edge and some actual shadow shifting, which is good. So it's not all aligned. But this is one of the wonderful things about the Terry Ludwigs. It's that Judy was telling me, she goes, "Oh, you're just gonna love having that square edge." Yeah, I do. I kind of round it off a little bit, but still got a nice square edge on it, which I'm very happy to use. Let's get in and do this here. So as you'll notice, I'm looking at the reference, but I'm not mimicking everything. I'm shifting things around. I'm gonna make this trunk a little bit bigger. Oh, that's cool. Yeah. So now I know my values are shifting a little bit, but notice that this and this are about the same thickness. So eventually I want to change that. I don't want them to be identical. One of those things that I always look at afterwards. This one I definitely want to be thicker, so let's get that started. And so I will usually do the darkest darks more toward the end because I will be taking it all the way down to perhaps a black. But I want to know where that's going first. And I don't want to force myself into a corner, which I've done too many times. Like, oh no, now I can't get away from it. It's too dark, and I have to rub it out or something, which is awkward. Now the other thing I'm working at, here's interesting. Notice I ended up with parallel lines here. I don't want that. I want them to either converge or diverge, but not to be parallel. So I may have to play with that a little bit. But I can do some of that by painting around it. Let's get these up in here. A little bit more shadow in here. And I can come back over these shadows with, say, a slightly different green. Let's go with a yellower green. This is a Mount Vision I've got in my hand. So I've already put these shadows in, but I can actually start going over top of that as well. Just little flicks of a different color just to break it up. Now, the Mount Visions and the Jack Richardsons and the Terry Ludwigs work very differently on the papers, as you know. Lynn Howarth, the Scottish artist, has said that, oh, she knows exactly what pastel she's gotten in her hand by the noise it makes on the paper. And you know, she's right. I think you can. But she's been doing it for years. I'm going to bring that one forward just a little bit. And I found that the Mount Vision is going to go into the tooth differently than the Jack Richardson or the Terry Ludwig. The Terry Ludwig, with its creamy binder, is going to leave stuff on top sooner, whereas these are just hard enough and just dusty enough that they get in further. So if I really want to fill a space and not leave a lot of paper texture, Mount Vision does a good job of that. And if I do want to accentuate the texture, Terry Ludwig and Jack Richardson will do that. Any other questions you want me to address? Anything, whether materials wise or technique or business, any of those are good.
Well, I think Mark, you've really shed a lot of light on, especially on this paper, which I think a lot of people are, probably going to go out and maybe purchase some of this because I think it's just really an interesting surface.
It is.
And yeah, I mean your whole technique is great, and I hope that this demo has encouraged people to consider doing one of your workshops.
Oh yeah, the 2-dayer is going to be so much fun, you guys, because we get to go deep into this stuff. We start with a 1 day. I'm going to do at least 2 demos, possibly 4, during that time, and you guys can paint along with me, or you can paint on your own. I've had people just paint what they're doing and then watch the video later. You can catch up with that. Just while we're chit chatting along. And what you see here today, how I'm doing this here, this is pretty much how I do a workshop. I will talk while I'm painting, and I can field questions live while I'm painting. So I'm very happy to do that. So yeah, I hope we can see more of you there. It's so much fun. BF and I had a ball when we did one how long ago? That was a while ago. Oh, you're muted. Go ahead.
So somebody said,
Okay, it has been a while, but we've
Yeah.
done more than one though. Mark, I did your one with the snow.
Oh, you did snow.
Yeah, and then I did one that was, I don't know, it was a green thing, but I ended up not doing a green thing because I didn't have the same paper.
That's right. You did. I remember that now.
So, but it was still good to hear it all.
Yeah,
And to
and
be in
I
your wonderful company.
yeah, it was great company, and the people that always bring interesting ideas. I love that about workshops. Because we just talk the whole time we're doing this. It's just so much fun. We're here and playing around with pastels and color and shape and shadow, and oh gosh, it's so much fun. I really dig it. So I'm very much looking forward to doing the August one. I'm super lucky. I will have just come back from Scotland and Wales.
Wow.
Like 2 weeks before we do the workshop, and I'm going to be so buzzed, so jazzed. It's going to be I'm going to be a bundle of energy. It'll be super fun.
that's great.
Oh yeah, so yeah, going for feel, to me, that concept will take you so far in so many different fields. If you're doing abstracts, if you're doing portraits, if you're doing still lifes, all of this is about what are you getting out of your scene, and what are you bringing to the viewer. And we'll work on that. It's really fun.
So Mark,
Bonnie, we're almost at one. What?
yeah, so
2:30 your time.
We'll probably wrap things up here pretty soon. but
Okay.
Susie's asking, will you eventually have a top layer of pastel on everything? I guess meaning
Yeah, pretty much.
overpainting, and then or you're underpainting, and then
It depends on how much saturation I need to go with. What I find is that my strokes at this point are relatively large. They get smaller and smaller as I get toward the end. What I'm going to do next on this painting, I'm gonna work these shadows, of course, until I know where all the shadow parts are that I really want. Like some of this has to be filled in, and then I'm going to go in and really nail my highlights. And we'll see there are a couple of them in the reference that may or may not show up here. But how do I lead the eye through this back thing so that we can tell that there's a behind, that there's a back part to the woods.
yeah.
And really, by the time we're done, all of the paper will be covered pretty much in this case. But not all of the underpainting will be covered. Some of that's going to still show through. And that's where this texture that I did before, since I'm not drawing every leaf and every twig, some of the texture that I put down below is actually helping me get that on top.
Right.
Yeah.
So then somebody asked, well, I guess it's Susie asked also, do you provide reference photos in your workshops?
I do, and you're welcome to use them, and you're welcome to work from your own stuff. Again, my sense is whatever inspires you the most, definitely use that. And like BF said, she didn't have anything with greens in it, and we painted anyway. It was good to just play with it. Some of the concepts will translate to pretty much anything, and some of the going for feel, absolutely, you can use anything you like. But yeah, I'll have at least 5 reference photos per day that we will choose from as options.
Great.
And In fact, I've done it a couple of times where we'll choose. I will choose like the morning's demo, but I'll let you choose the afternoon's demo and scare the daylights out of myself. It's it's super risky and it's a ton of fun, and you always learn something whether it comes out like a great painting or not. So those are fun, yeah. So I'm looking forward to doing that. What else have we got?
Then Jean asked if you ever use new pastels.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I got a nice big set of them that I've been using, and I bought while they still had individual stock. I bought several key colors that I like to keep. They're black, by the way. If you really want to use a black, and sometimes I do, their black is black. And the next one I say is Rembrandt. Rembrandt does a beautiful job of that. But yeah, new pastels I do use. Sometimes I'll use them as blenders, just to take the softer stuff and move it around a little bit. Sometimes you can use it like a squeegee and just put a little bit of color down with it. Other times, for example, the white I will use as highlight on snow. If it's way up in the mountains someplace and all I need is that really fine line, that's sometimes the best way to get it. Yeah.
And Kathy asked if will you list the materials that you discussed and or somewhere where they can be found?
Yes. I have the materials list is in the registration details. There'll always be the materials that I'm going to use. So I will say I'm going to use one of or two of these different kinds of papers, and I will list them all. And then I also say what brands of pastels I'm using, and those are all listed there too. So yeah, including the erasers and that sort of thing that I often use. Yeah, those are all in the details of the registration. So we've got, let's see, Bonnie, we have the PSWC registrations all coming through you guys, right? Those
Right.
details should be there. And if they're not, I can make a page that I can get you a link to that will have that as well. But it's a pretty stock set of stuff that I'm using for the workshops. It's been honed over years, and it's expanded and contracted a little bit over time. But the current ones, if you go to any of my workshops, you'll see the materials list, and they are pretty standard for all of them. The other thing I want to say too about it is that not everybody's got these papers, and if you can't get them by August 20th, it's not a big deal. Use the paper you like the most. I'm going to try to use a variety of papers so you can see how some of these techniques work on different surfaces. So I'll use it probably 2 different papers a day when we do this.
That's fantastic. That's great. I think it's really important for people to experiment with different surfaces, and I mean it's paper and pastels, and we don't want to waste it. However, it is just paper and pastels.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know. So I think, Mark, if you have been so generous with your time today, and I appreciate it, and I know that our audience has appreciated it, and this is recorded, so people that couldn't make it today will have the opportunity to watch it. And
Sweet.
so I want to thank you for your time, and I look forward to a lot of people signing up for your workshops, especially the PSWC one, the 24th
Yeah.
and 5th of August.
That's going to be really fun because again, really get to dive in. The 1-dayers are nice, but the 2-day you get all the way in, which I really love. Yeah, very cool.
All right.
And you're very welcome. This was really fun. Thanks so much for inviting me. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll do it. We'll do it again sometime.
Oh, good. Yeah, great.
All right. So thanks so much, everybody. Thanks for joining us. And we'll do the next We Talk Art is with Doug Dawson. That's going to be on August 17th. That's a Saturday also. So that'll be a fun.
Cool.
I mean,
Nice. You guys get Doug Dawson. You guys get, wow.
I'm
It's
so
very
excited
cool.
about all these interviews that I get to do. So anyway, again, Mark, thanks so much. And everybody have a great rest of the weekend. And if you're in the heat wave, stay cool and drink a lot of water.
Thank you.
So take good
Thank you.
care.
Thank you. It was wonderful, Mark. Good seeing you.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Great, thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you very much.